Hello everyone, my name is Clayton Oster with ContentWatch, and I am the demonstrator for today's webinar to talk about using 3 methods to identify and control bandwidth hogging zombies on our networks. I think that's appropriate with the upcoming Halloween holiday, and hopefully we can show you some ways to use the Content Protect security appliance in ways that will help your organization identify and control the bandwidth within your organization. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Basically, to introduce myself, I'm the Senior Director of Technology here at ContentWatch. Today's goal is really to help you understand how to use our technology and our solutions to help you control and monitor the bandwidth in your network. The issues or the comments that have prompted this topic have been, many of our customers have actually called us and said, could you suggest a solution that would allow us to know which apps are using the bandwidth on our network, or could you suggest a way that we could identify who those users are or what their applications are or the websites, and this brought up the topic of, well, we can already do that with our solution, and maybe we just need to do a little bit of training and help you understand how to better use the product. Really, the goal of today's demonstration is to help you better understand how to use it. With that, I would like to also let you know that you can ask questions during this demo. I don't know that we will get to answering all of your questions. There's several people attending. We have a lot of people on the phone with us, and we have several that can answer questions at the end of the demonstration. But you can use your GoToWebinar or your GoToMeeting client in the questions section to ask questions. So as I'm going through today's demonstration, if you have a question or need additional information, please put that question in there. I will try to get to as many of those as I can at the end, and if we don't answer your question, we will make sure that someone contacts you and helps you understand how to better use the product and answers your question. I just wanted to cover a couple quick trends in our technology world. I had several statistics I wanted to share, but I don't want to waste a lot of your time. But this one is interesting, and it's applicable to what we're talking about today. 10% of employees waste 5 to 10 hours of a week with leisure internet use while at work. What that means is about 20% or 15% of your internet or your employees' time could potentially be wasted with leisure internet use during the week. This chart actually shows the top sites that employees like to waste time on. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing anything malicious or inappropriate, but it does mean that they're potentially not on the clock and helping your organization be successful. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Today, really what we'd like to talk about is bandwidth and how people use the bandwidth within your organization. And that actually brings up an opportunity for me to ask you a question as we get started. And the question is, what percentage of your traffic is related to job function for the organization within your company? And I'm going to go ahead and open up this poll. I'm curious to see what kind of responses you guys have. The options are obviously 10 to 20%, 20 to 40%, 40 to 60, 60 plus, or I don't know. Believe it or not, there was an article in Salary.com that most small businesses in the United States of America don't really know. And so don't be embarrassed if you're one of those guys that says, I don't know, and we're not going to call you out. We're trying to get a little bit of information. I'm going to leave this poll open for just a couple seconds longer, and then let's go ahead and close the poll. I appreciate your participation, and I'll go ahead and share those results with you as well. What we're seeing here is many of you believe that it's below or 10 to 20%, and about 40% of you are split on the other direction of 40 to 60 or 60% plus. So that's good information. I appreciate this. This kind of helps us know what things to focus on and features to build into our products to help you better use it. I'm going to go ahead and hide this poll, and let's jump into today's demonstration. So really the goal is we're going to cover 3 techniques or methods you can use our Content Protect appliance to see which applications are consuming bandwidth to see which users or devices are consuming bandwidth, and to create limitations and rules to control the bandwidth in your network. Obviously, this isn't going to fit exactly into everyone's organization, but hopefully the techniques and the technology I'm going to show you can be applied in your appliance and in your network, and you can get the most out of this solution. The first one, obviously, is which applications are consuming the bandwidth. I'm going to try here to show you three things: what kinds of applications, what actually the specific names are of these apps, and then look at websites and web categories by bandwidth as well. And to do this, I'm actually going to jump into a sample appliance here on our network and show you how to do this. So this here is a sample appliance on our network, similar to the ones all of you use. I'm logging into the web console, and to get this information, it's really easy. You'll notice I have options over here under reports. These are starting places or entry points for reporting information. Under applications, there's two real important options to see which kind of apps are using the bandwidth. Here under application set overview, I'll click here. This report, you'll notice, shows the types or the kinds of applications that are consuming the bandwidth. By default, this is sorted by which application types consume the most bandwidth. In all of our reports up here at the top, these filters apply specific granularity. Which users are we viewing? Which groups are we viewing? What devices are we viewing? The date range, etc. In this case, by default, by just going straight to the application set overview, no filters are applied, and it shows me the last 24 hours. And you can obviously bump this out to a week, a month, a year, a custom date range, whatever you're interested in. Now, if you take a look closely at this report, what we see is the type of application, the amount of download and upload, and then the percentage. So on our network, HTTP or web traffic is 44%. 28% is peer-to-peer traffic. VPN traffic is 14%, streaming media, etc. And we see the percentages and the amount of bandwidth that they've used. Now, from this report, most IT administrators look at this and say, yeah, but that's not the detail I want. Peer-to-peer is pretty vague. I don't know what that means. So on any of these application types, you can right-click, correlate, and get the actual names of the apps. So I'll say here, correlate by application. And for peer-to-peer now, this is a list of every peer-to-peer app in our organization that's being used and how much data it's actually consuming. So if we look at that closely, we can see the number one peer-to-peer app in our organization is Kazaa. You can do this for any type of report. Now, in addition to this, you can drill into the details. So for Kazaa now, again, if I right-click and correlate, you'll notice I have an option to get a list of the users, groups, or IP addresses. Network nodes would be IP addresses that are using the Kazaa application. So we've determined maybe that Kazaa is problematic, and I want a list of all the IP addresses running Kazaa. Now I have the Kazaa traffic by network node or by IP address, and we see that 10.0.128.38 is consuming 91% of all of our Kazaa traffic. So, and you can do this for anything. The reason why this is important is because if I start at this report and someone says to me, what kind of apps are consuming your bandwidth? And I say, well, we got a lot of streaming media. That doesn't say anything to most people. Streaming media could be videos, it could be iTunes, it could be Netflix. No one really knows for sure what it is. But by sorting the application type, I can say it's mostly streaming media, and in our case, it's mostly Flash videos. So you can get those exact details. Now, if you want a detailed report with the exact application names, so instead of going into a type of app, but you actually want a name of the app, that's very simple as well. Over here under Application Overview, you'll notice that this shows the name of the apps, and it also shows the amount of bandwidth that's been used. So in our case, I'm already sorting and saying on our network, the number one application outside of web traffic is Kazaa, or BitTorrent, or SSL, or we just looked at Flash videos. Again, if I want to know who those people are, or the users or IP addresses, right-click, correlate, and I can choose the name, or to see the names of the users. So in this case, this shows all the users on my network watching Flash videos. James is our top guy, and if I actually drill into the James report, I can see a timeline of when he's been watching Flash videos. throughout the day. So it's a very valuable tool in showing you which applications, names of the applications or application types are consuming the bandwidth. In addition to applications, you can also get this same data for websites or web content. Instead of starting at applications, I'll come down here to web usage, and I'll click on Web Hits Overview. Now, this report will show me, by default, the allowed, the blocked, the bypassed, the number of websites blocked or allowed or bypassed in our organization. I'm not interested in the number, I'm interested in the bandwidth. So what I'll do here is click on the allowed. This shows me the categories of websites based on the hits or clicks per category and the percentages. So I can say we click on a lot of technology sites or shopping or advertising. But by default, this doesn't really tell me anything for bandwidth, it just tells me a number. So to sort this report by bandwidth, I simply click on the View Bandwidth report on the right. Over here on the right, I click View Bandwidth, and now it shows the web categories in our organization by how much bandwidth they use. Gaming, technology, entertainment, and how much bandwidth they've actually consumed. Again, this is my entire organization, so I can say in our company, a lot of our bandwidth is consumed by gaming websites, technology sites, and entertainment sites. If I wanted to see this for an individual or a group, I would simply apply the filters at the top. It makes it really easy to use. In addition, this is showing me categories, but I can also get it based on websites. The reason why this is important, which I'll show you a little bit later in today's webinar, is you can use this data to create shaping rules as well. So instead of looking at categories, let's look at hosts. This will show me the websites in our organization that are consuming the most bandwidth. So in our organization, the number one consuming website is Google. But then if I look down here, I can see ATA Online, Facebook, Template Monster, Hulu, and actually see how much bandwidth these websites are consuming. So I can identify the apps, the specific application type or name, or the web content, and that can be the name of the site or the content type on the site based on how much bandwidth these are consuming. So that's kind of an overview of how you can get the details for your entire network and see specifically what's going on. Now, if we jump into the next portion of our demonstration, really what I'd like to show you is how we can get information based on users or devices as well. So we started out with which apps, what apps are consuming bandwidth, what sites are consuming bandwidth, but a lot of times people come and say, I just want to know who those users are, right? Who's hogging the bandwidth? Who's using all the website traffic? So this is really easy to do. You can do it by IP address, you can do it by user, and you can also get the details on what exactly those users are doing once you drill into that report. So I'll jump back out to my report here. And here I will go to users. So instead of web usage, I'll come up here to users. If I click on either directory user, group overview, or network overview, it will immediately sort by how much bandwidth is being consumed. So I've clicked here on network node overview. You'll notice if I scroll down, this sorts the IP addresses on our network based on how much bandwidth they've consumed. So 10.0.128.61 is consuming 19% of our bandwidth. I can see the same report based on users if I've integrated this with directory services. So if I've integrated my appliance with a directory server, this allows me to see the actual names of the users. So Joe is consuming 30% of all of our bandwidth, which could be a problem. To get more detail, I can click on either Joe or the IP address, depending on the report I was viewing, and get what we call a detailed summary report. So this summary report shows me a summary of when Joe's been consuming that 30%. Over here on the right, the kinds of apps that he's been using, peer-to-peer, VPN, web traffic. I'll drill into that in just a minute. If I scroll down further, I can see the domains he's been consuming bandwidth with, or the number of hits or clicks per domain, the categories of websites, and then also the info about spyware and malware sites that the appliance is protecting him from. Now, up here at the top, I can see that Joe, which we just saw used 30% of our bandwidth, is a high usage guy for peer-to-peer networking. So I'll drill into the application reports. Again, this is Joe in the last 24 hours, and 45% of all of his traffic is some kind of peer-to-peer client. Again, I right-click, I correlate by app, and now I can say, okay, and most of Joe's traffic is a BitTorrent client. We see how much he's downloaded and uploaded and a percentage. So just in these few clicks, we found that Joe is using 30% of our bandwidth, and over half of his bandwidth is peer-to-peer networking, and most of it is BitTorrent. So if I click on his BitTorrent client, we can see when he's been using BitTorrent. In this case, it looks like a relatively short period throughout the day. And you can do this for IP addresses as well. So if people aren't logging into Active Directory or into a directory service, you can still get the information, but it's going to be based on the IP address. So over here under Network Node Overview, you can see the IP addresses. I come down here and I say, okay, well, this IP is using a lot of bandwidth. Who is it? What is it? I can come in here, I can click on it, I can get that same detailed report that I just showed you, but instead of showing it by a username, it's by an IP address. You see the peer-to-peer traffic, and I showed you how we can drill into that as well. So it makes it really easy to get those details on which users are consuming the bandwidth, which IP addresses are consuming the bandwidth, and this could potentially be important to you because a lot of people are allowing their employees or visitors on their network to bring their own devices and plug them in, which means they're not necessarily going to be logged into a computer and identified by a username. They're just going to be a network node or an IP address on your network. So both of these options are very valuable. The last part I wanted to kind of drill into today with the report, let me jump back here, was how can we create some rules for these things that we've just determined. We want to create some limitations and rules. And a lot of questions, actually, just as I've been talking, I've seen a few come in that say, how can I limit a single user? How can I block that? I just saw peer-to-peer and I don't want it at all. How can we stop that altogether? So what I'd like to do is kind of show you how to define some groups, explain why groups are important. I'll teach you how to put some limitations on overall usage for groups, and then limitations on apps and websites and content type as well. So I'm going to jump back into this, and instead of looking at reports, now we've kind of identified the issues on our network, we're going to go in and manage that. So I'll jump here to the Manage tab, and I'll click here on Groups. Now, these groups here, depending on how your appliance is set up, can be one of two types. A group can be an existing Active Directory or directory agent group, which that means any organizational unit within a directory could be used. It could be the domain users, it could be the OU of your entire domain, it could be a single leaf object. Kind of mix and match how you want to create those. Or these local groups are managed on the appliance itself. And you can mix and match types. For those of you that just asked the question, well, how do I limit a single user? So let's say I have one guy in my network and his name is Bob, and I don't want Bob to use more than 500K of bandwidth. Well, if you want to confine Bob all by himself to 500K, what you would do is you'd create a group and you would just add Bob to that group. Now, if I create a local group, you'll notice when I create these groups, I have options to choose single users out of my Active Directory. I could do it by IP address. I could do it by a subnet number. You can kind of mix and match. The real concept on the appliance is to manage an entire group at once. So if you really need specific settings for a single user, the way you do that is you create a group, you even make it a local group on your appliance, and add that single user to the device. Now, this is important because if someone's logging in at multiple computers or multiple times at different IP addresses, if you've done it by username and integrated with directory services, then they're going to get those settings shared across multiple devices. Bob wouldn't get 500K at each computer. He'd get a shared accumulative 500K, which is important. Now, groups, let me kind of go off of a sample. Let's say we have a customer service department, and we have them on their own VLAN. Well, I could put a VLAN number to a group, or I could use an existing Active Directory group, or I could mix and match and put just an IP address in for a server that I want to manage. So groups are powerful because you're allowed to kind of manage who's a member of a group. If group overlap occurs, you can also, in the admin portion, choose which group will take precedence. So once I identify groups, here under the Policy Manager, I choose that group. So for example, our executive staff group, and I associate policies with it. The first policy would be for internet filtering, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today because really we're talking about bandwidth. But this is where you could create block and allow rules or apply block and allow rules to our executive staff group. But you can also associate shaping rules. Shaping rules are important for bandwidths, for applications, and for web content type. So let's create a shaping rule for our executive staff group. I'll come here to shaping rules, and we'll create a new one. We'll call this executive staff bandwidth. Now, your network, these options on percentages will be different depending on how large your network is and how much bandwidth you have, but the concepts will be the same. To start out with, I want to put some limitations on how much bandwidth our executive staff has available to them. Now, again, keep in mind this is a group, so this is everyone within the executive staff group. It's not a single user. So in the case of the executive staff group, I'm going to limit them to no more than 60% of our total bandwidth. If all I did was save this and apply it to the executive staff group, now they would all be sharing a 3 meg internet connection instead of a 5. Now, this doesn't do anything to optimize their network or to make it fast. It just limits total upload or download for the entire group. Again, if you have one group that's got only one user, now you've allocated bandwidth specifically to that user. You can also choose a priority. So you could say executive staff bandwidth may be a little bit higher priority. Maybe the visitors on your network potentially have a lower priority, so one could take precedence over the other. Once you've identified the overall throughput, then you can jump into applications. So, executive staff, we just saw that this network has some streaming media. I don't mind that the streaming media, and I think that's okay, but we want to make sure that it's limited or throttled back to allow other traffic through. Now, our executive staff has 3 megs of throughput. You'll notice that I've marked this as 3 megs of throughput, but what I'll do is lower the priority. This ensures that streaming media can occur, but only when other traffic doesn't need it. This means web traffic will throttle back streaming media. Email will throttle back streaming media. At the same time, maybe our executive staff is using a VoIP protocol to make phone calls. I don't want this to be slow. I don't want choppy phone calls. It doesn't need all 3 megs of bandwidth. Maybe it only needs 2. But what it does need is a higher priority. So I'll come over here and set this to 2 megs. So now our executive staff has prioritized VoIP traffic, no choppy phone calls. The streaming media is allowed, but it's a lower priority. Maybe we've determined that peer-to-peer is not acceptable on our network at all. Again, to answer that question of how do I block it, it's simple. I come in here, I set this to 1K, both upload and download, and I make it the lowest priority. What this says is peer-to-peer can't connect unless there's 1K of free bandwidth and there's nothing else going on the network, which will never occur. Just standard latency, throughput, and even if it was, the peer-to-peer client in this case would never be able to connect. Coming soon from this drop-down, there'll be a block option, but this does the exact same thing. This blocks the application from connecting. So our executive staff, their internet's pretty much standard. I haven't done much to optimize it yet, but their streaming media is a lower priority. Their VoIP is a higher priority. And you can do this for any kind of application. Email. Instead of getting the phone call from the CEO that says, my email's slow, what's wrong? I can say, okay, well, email, we're going to just say it potentially could use all of the bandwidth and make it a higher priority. So now I've optimized email, so the email's not slow while someone is watching an online video because streaming media is a lower priority. At the same time, we can do this same type of thing for web content. So we looked at our reports a little while ago, and we saw that ataonline.com is using a lot of bandwidth. I don't mind that this occurs, but I can't have it slowing down our network while somebody's doing an online backup. So what I'll do is put a limitation on how much bandwidth it can use. It can only use 500K. Now that backup's going to occur, but instead of sucking up all the bandwidth, it's going to be confined to a 500K connection, and it may take longer to back up. It may take all night, but it's not going to slow down our network connection. At the same time, maybe our executive staff is using Google Apps. Well, we can't have Google Apps being slow. It's important. It's job critical. So I've gone in and I've said apps.google.com. We're going to give it some bandwidth. But even more importantly, I'm going to make it the highest priority on our network. So now no one ever says Google Apps is slow, because it's not. Regardless of what's going on, it will take precedence over any other traffic. At the same time, we come into the office and we find out that our entire organization is watching the Olympics. And so they're all on NBCOlympics.com. Again, I could be a little bit heavy-handed and create a rule and block it. But in my case, I don't mind that it uses all the bandwidth. It's just got to be a lot lower priority. Now NBC Olympics can only get available bandwidth when nothing else needs it. You can do this by category as well. Back to my data at the beginning of the demonstration, it is estimated that 26% of employee time in the month of December is spent shopping for Christmas online. Well, instead of allowing our employees to spend all day shopping, I'm going to deter them from shopping. So I'm going to come down to shopping websites, and we're going to put a limit on how much bandwidth shopping sites can use. The site will still load, but it's a lower priority, and our entire executive staff is now sharing 128K connection to shopping sites, which means Amazon is going to be relatively slow. Now, these rules can be applied all the time. They can be applied during different times of the day or different days of the week as well. So this rule doesn't have to be all the time. I can come over here under time of day rules and say this rule only applies at 8 to 5, and after 5 o'clock it's free reign. Everyone can go to Amazon as much as they'd like and get all the bandwidth they'd like, or watch videos, or etc. So these rules don't have to be applied to all the time, and they don't have to be applied to everyone. This rule right now, after I save it, the executive staff team, now I have my executive staff bandwidth. Here under Policy Manager, I choose the group that I want to use that rule. So the rules can be different for customer service. The rules can be different for departments, for individuals, depending on what you need. So here under executive staff, I'll come here to my shaping rule, and we will select the executive staff bandwidth rule I just created and save it. Now everyone in the executive staff gets that rule set. It makes it easy. A real common question, which I've actually seen a couple of them come through as we've been talking today, is, well, what if they're not logged into their computer? Which actually jumps into a next poll question that I had for you. Jump right here and we'll ask it. What percentage of your employees do you allow to bring their own device on your internet connection? This is becoming more and more of a trend in our industry. We are seeing more and more people allowed to bring their iPads or their Android devices, their own laptop, for example. And so I wanted to ask you in a question if you're allowing your employees to bring these devices, and if you are, how many are bringing them, and what percentage are. So let me just go ahead and open that up real quick. Basically, the question says, do you allow BYOD, bring your own device, in your organization? There's a lot of people that say, no, we don't allow that at all. We got a lot of people that say, we've given up trying to curb the tide. We've let anyone bring it that wants to, or some people just kind of pick and choose. So I just wanted to get your feedback. I appreciate your participation. I'll give this just one more second, and I'll go ahead and close the poll. And let's look at the results. So looks like some of you are not at all, not allowing anyone to bring it, and a huge portion of us are Kind of like me, we've given up. That's what I've done. I've just let anyone bring the device at all. So if these people are bringing their own devices and they're on your network, the question is, well, what can you do to control how much bandwidth they're using? Now, let me kind of show you how the appliance will allow you to do that. I'm going to jump back here to the appliance, and let me turn off the poll real quick. And so here in the appliance, you can create policies that are applied to devices that are maybe not logged into Active Directory. So back here under groups, you'll notice there's all these groups identified. I can identify a group with an Active Directory group or an IP address, but obviously on the typical network, you don't know the IP address of your bring your own devices, the iPad that just got onto your Wi-Fi. So what typically people will do is they'll create groups for logged in users, which say if you're logged into your computer, you get these settings. But then the default group, you'll notice here, I can't really alter the members of the default group, which means anyone that is not identified in another group, not logged into their computer, not identified as a subnet, not identified as a VLAN number, etc., is going to be a member of the default group. So the way usually an organization can solve the issue of I want to control it, I want to make it less optimized for people that are bringing their own device or for visitors, is they will create a shaping rule that's very restrictive and then apply it to the default group. So here under shaping rules, I just went through creating a rule. We'll create a rule and we'll call it unauthenticated. Now, even though I've got a 5 meg pipe here, we're going to put all unauthenticated users into a 1 meg bucket, which means if I don't know who you are, you haven't logged into your computer, you haven't identified who you are, then you're going to get a 1 meg internet connection. And I'm going to put some limits on it. I'm going to make your streaming media really slow. I'm going to say it's 500K, and we're going to maybe block peer-to-peer networking, or we're going to limit how much bandwidth games or FTP can use. Maybe we're going to make shopping sites really slow and dating sites even slower, etc., etc. And you create this rule, and then once you save it, you come back here to Policy Manager, and you apply it to the default group. So now the default group has this really restrictive group or list of websites that are limited and blocked under internet usage and really restrictive shaping rules. So it makes it easy for me to limit how much my liability is based on people bringing their own devices into the network. But at the same time, when you create a rule for people who maybe want to authenticate and identify themselves, there's a workaround. When you create an internet usage rule, this is the allowed and blocked content, you can also associate a web authentication page, which means, hey, I just got my iPad, I logged into the Wi-Fi on our network here, but you don't know who I am, it's just an iPad, I got it for Christmas. Well, the first web page you go to could be a custom web page that you've identified that allows them to log in with their Active Directory credentials. That means when they log in, I now know Bob is Bob from Active Directory. I can associate him back with a different group, with a group that's maybe the executive staff group or the customer service group or the engineering group, whatever he's part of, and he can get those same settings and the same profile, the same bandwidth, the same internet filtering as he would on his desktop PC, but on his iPad. So it allows you to grant people the ability to bring their own device, get those same settings on their own device without having to integrate it with a directory server. Makes it very easy to use. And that's kind of an overview of how you can obviously control the bandwidth in your organization. I just wanted to thank you all for coming. Let me take a look real quick at some of the questions that we've had, and I'll try to answer some of them. Let me see what I have here. Let's see. Why can't I set it to 0 kilobytes? I think that's a great question. The truth is, 1K, and right now although it's a kind of a fluke on our UI, 1K and 0K is actually setting it to block altogether. So if you set it to 1K, they're still not ever going to be able to connect. So that is effectively blocking it. It's actually a pet peeve I have as well. But when you create a shaping rule, if you set something to 1K, it is blocked. A couple other questions here. Oh, how do I block an individual website for an organization? That's a great question. So let me jump back here. When you create an internet usage rule, so again here under Policy Manager, we saw, I'll click here on Executive Staff, two types of rules. The shaping, which I just went into, and then over here, internet usage. Think of it like this. Shaping is bandwidth, optimization, and apps. Internet usage is block and allowed categories and websites. So think of internet usage as yes, no, bandwidth as optimized, shaped, prioritized. So internet usage rules, when you create a rule, it's very easy to block a single website. So the first page here, this is based on categories. Most people are familiar with this. But if you've got a single URL you want to block, here under the blocked URLs, you can simply add, you could even import a list if you want, but you can edit the list and you can add a full domain or even just a single website. So maybe we've decided that we're going to block MySpace for this entire group. I add it to the list, I click OK. Now everything in MySpace would be blocked. You want to just make sure that you apply this or create this rule in the internet usage rule that's applied to the user or the group that you want to block it for. And again, you can see that very easily under Policy Manager by selecting the group. It's very easy to manage. I'm looking here to see if there's any other questions that I could answer. Is there a way the device... Let me jump back over here and see what I'm reading. So two good questions. One, when will I be able to administer my appliance with something other than Internet Explorer? I have like 4 of those here. I appreciate the question because personally I'm a Chrome user and I don't care for Internet Explorer at all. It is something that's in the works. It's actually something that's coming out sooner than for the longest time I anticipated it would just never really happen. But it is something that's slated for the first part of next year. It will just be an update, and then the appliance will be accessible via any web browser that supports Java. There is a caveat. It's still going to have to support Java. And then there's another question here that says, is there a way I can use my appliance for remote devices that aren't on my network? And the answer to that question is yes. So embedded in the appliance, under the admin portion, there's an option to use your appliance as a proxy server. There's a caveat, though. You can't change the port that this proxy server runs on. So you either need to map a specific port through on your firewall to the appliance or just decide you're going to use the port that it uses. The appliance by default will work on port 8888, and then you can proxy through it. There's some caveats. When you proxy through it, obviously the only traffic that gets logged is the proxy traffic, which means if one web browser is set up as a proxy and the other one is not, it's not going to go through your appliance. Things like traffic shaping don't get applied when they go through your proxy server. You're going to go straight to the internet. So keep that in mind. But it is still a good solution for blocking inappropriate content for remote users. It does actually add some latency as well because instead of going straight to the internet, you're going through a proxy server, which most people are aware of. I did want to point out real quick something in shaping rules that's important to understand. And I'm seeing a lot of questions here that kind of refer to the same type of thing, just with different questions. If you have a specific app that you want to shape, so here under shaping rules, create, you'll notice that when under applications, these are types of apps, right? There's not a specific app here. There's nothing here that says Netflix or World of Warcraft or BitTorrent. These just say types of apps. You, in your appliance, though, can edit these rules or these types of applications or even create your own. So under the admin portion, you have the ability to identify or create new rules for things that are outside of what we identify as an application set. And I'm not going to drill into how to do that today, but if it's something that's interesting to you, please send me an email, costler, C-O-S-T-L-E-R, and I will make sure that we have someone from support contact you and teach you how to do that. It's relatively easy. So if you want to create a rule for, how do I just shape Netflix? Well, the first thing you could do is you could shape the URL or the whole domain coming and going from Netflix. That would help. But if you wanted to shape the application Netflix, we could do that as well by capturing some data signatures, identifying some ports, and then from your drop down here, you could actually have one that's called Netflix that you've just created. Or maybe you have a custom accounting application. Obviously, it wouldn't be listed here, but this list is not static. You can create more things to be added to this list as you go, and it's just it would be a whole another hour demonstration for me to show you that today, but it is something that we'd be more than willing to teach you how to do if you would just send me an email at and I'll go ahead and pop that up on the screen at costler@contentwatch.com. We'd be more than willing to teach you how to do that or have someone give you a call. And that's kind of the end of today's demonstration. I appreciate all your time. I know many of you are trying to get the most out of your appliance. You're struggling to manage the bandwidth in your networks, kind of get a grip on what's going on. I hope that these tips have been valuable to your organization. And I'm going to go ahead and end today's demonstration. Again, thank you for your time. Please, if you have additional questions, send me an email, and I will make sure that someone contacts you directly so that we can get you using your appliance and getting the most out of it. And walk you through setting it up. It's not something that we want to charge you for. It's just something that we want to help you out with. So, and it would be free, obviously. Thanks again for your time, and everyone have a great day. Thanks. Bye.